welcome to Voices of Widows. At this time, we would have the national anthem sung by Michelle Doldridge and a prayer by Minister Bihari.
Forged from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare. Side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea, this our native land. We pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation.
Please bow with me in prayer. Let us pray. God of the universe, the one who made the sun and the moon and the stars, the one who created us human beings in your image and likeness, the one who gave us to each other to have families and friends and communities. We come to you on this blessed day to thank you for all of these relationships and bonds that you have placed in our lives. And to remember, oh God, that love is something that transcends life and even death. And so on this International Day of Widows, we lift to you now all of these broken hearts, all of these women who have given their lives in love and are now journeying on this earth by themselves. We thank you, O God, for the strength that you have placed in them, for the endurance to run the race that they still have ahead. We thank you for the small gifts of laughter and the joy they still find. We thank you, O God, for all of the sisters, that cloud of witnesses that you have placed around these ladies, to lift them up when they have fallen, to carry them in their times of need. Today, O God, we thank you for this Widows Association and for their work in caring for those whom you have named as your special ones, to be loved and nurtured in their times of need. We ask, oh God, that you continue to build those bonds between these ladies, all those who serve on this organization, and for the work to come. We know that you will continue to shine your light on them, so they will continue to be a blessing, a source of hope, and a source of peace and comfort for all those who seek it. We lift all these prayers to you. Through Christ we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Good day, and thank you for allowing us into your hearts and homes as we welcome and celebrate International Widows' Day. With the remainder of the world, this is a virtual event. I am Carrot Sampson, bereavement counselor with the Belgrove Group of Companies and your hostess for today's event. VOW, V-O-W, Voices of Widows. Wow, windows of a widow. Something changed. All synonymous with different emotions. Widows, yes, you. Today we are taking you on a journey where we will listen to some of your voices, follow on their path through grief while looking through their windows and realizing that something has changed. But before we do so, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Keith Belgrove, the CEO of the Belgrove Group of Companies. He would share with you the history of the Belgrove Group of Companies and his reason for being so passionate about the company soon celebrating 134 years.
Thank you, Carrie, the ever-energetic Kevin Sampson, our bereavement counselor. Thank you so much for such an introduction. I would hope to fill those shoes, Kevin. Folks, good afternoon and welcome again. My role today is to welcome you all to this program, and it's quite a pleasure to do that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Windows of a Widow and some other topics as we go along. But before we jump into that, I just want to share a little bit about Belgroves. Most of you may know because it's highly publicized, but do you know that Belgroves was started by a former enslaved woman? Her name was Mary Belgrove. She was born in 1827 on Christmas Day in St. Lucie, Barbados. Around 1867, she came to Trinidad with 3 children. One son went into the Gaspereau area, and those survivors are still there. One son went into Penal area. Those survivors are still there. One son remained with her. His name was Joseph William Belgrove, and she is rumored to have started a funeral service on Lower St. James Street, San Fernando. We have seen documentation for that, but when she started, we couldn't tell. Joseph William Belgrove, a son, formalized a little bit better at 88 Coffee Street here in San Fernando on the 15th of August, 1888. So just now, we will be celebrating 134 years of service to Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and the wider world. And I'll tell you about how we did that, because Belgroves has a great history. We have won many awards, national and international awards, and those are things that we feel honored about. And one of the interesting things that I feel really good about, friends, is that the new address for Belgroves is 2 to 6 Belgrove Lane, San Fernando. I feel real good. Mayor Gallo honored us in that manner, and we deeply, deeply appreciate that. So Belgroves have impacted funeral service here in Trinidad by the many innovations we have done, and I'll just mention 2. First private crematorium in Trinidad and Tobago, first private cemetery owned by a funeral home, world class here in Trinidad and Tobago, based in Trincity. So that's just a couple first. Bereavement counseling, and when we did our centenary in 1988, some of the first that we did have led to so many awards, etc. Now, our future, the future of funeral service is going to be fantastic. And I'm not going to give up much about that, but watch for it, it's coming. It's going to change things, more innovations coming. As well, I talked about regionally. When people saw what we were doing, coming out of the Caribbean, saw what we were doing, they came here to learn from us. Antigua, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, a little bit out of Barbados, Dominica in particular, all came to Trinidad to learn and went back, a little bit out of Curacao as well. So those are the ways we impacted the Caribbean region. I was honored and named the first international chairman for the National Funeral Directors Association. I traveled around the world with them and looking at funeral service, giving little talks about people, different countries upgrading their standard of funeral service and putting the aspects of an international convention of funeral homes out there more and more. But that's not what we're all about today. Today it's about Windows of a Widow. And we're going to talk about that. There are many, many topics really about widowhood, and I doubt that we can cover all today. But as we walk through, and some of the topics I will just share with you, or better, let me just share with you how it came about. although we had the bereavement counseling program going on, I stopped off at a client's home. Her husband had just died, fresh news, and I sat in the bed because when I got there, she was crying, sitting in the bed. I sat next to her to console her, and she was actually saying, "What will I do?" Calling his name. "What will I do? How you could do this to me? How you could leave me so?" She was worried about the house. She was worried about finances. She was worried about the children. So these are very real experiences of widowhood. And we knew that when we said goodbye at the cemetery, that a phase was continuing. The funeral was only a phase, the first phase. The grief and the challenges of widowhood. Because so often as men, we keep things a secret and we don't share. Now, in all fairness, a lot of times men prepare well, and their spouse, in the event of death, and their families are well taken care of. But I'm doing this for 54 years, and in the majority of circumstances, no real preparation. So while we're talking widowhood, I want to say a quick word for just in case people are coming up with widows. There is that aspect of anticipatory widowhood, because you know your spouse is going to be leaving. He will be going home to his maker. Make good use of that time to make sure you find out all details about the deed, the will, the money. Find out all of these things, benefits of employment, etc. So that is absolutely necessary. Now, as widows, you're faced in many instances with trying to track all of this down. In one instance, they lived upstairs, the brother lived downstairs, and he was claiming the house is his. She's going to have to move with the children. Those are things that is necessary to be decided in advance. So as you face these type of challenges, do not be afraid to face your spouse. It's a partnership. Sit him down and talk with him. So those are some of the things that I'm sharing that you as widows could now share with others so they don't experience some of the problems. Because you're facing your grief, you're facing the challenges that widowhood creates for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. We are more focused. You're going to have to take on the role of mommy daddy. And when you get that call as mommy daddy, honor it. Now also widows, watch out for your teen boys losing dad. So often we see disciplinary problems come up. I'm not getting into those details today. I'm just giving them tips and pointers, and that we will talk about as well. So some of the things you're going to be looking at as well, changing of residence, as I talked about. There's the age differences. Younger widows, in my experience again, may have an easier time. Despite the grief, you have the ability now to go out there into the workplace and assist and earn for your family. More senior widows have a more challenging situation on their hand, but there are ways to find funds, and in fact, maybe Ms. Kelly Sampson may talk about a booklet we sponsor that will help you find ways to find funds once you become a widow. One of the big challenges you're going to have as widows, starting new relationships. Yeah, maybe now you're not ready. And this is a mixed crowd I'm speaking with. So some of you may have already embraced that challenge, but it's a challenge coming. And be ready. And this topic will help you with that. Especially today, we are talking a little bit about young widows. And yes, new relationships will come up. So, friends, I'm not taking over the talk today. This is Ms. Sampson and a fantastic team she has put together, and we'll even talk about wills, etc. So, I want to thank you, and thank you for participating, and let's get on with the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Belgrove. The ease at which you were able to share that wealth of information is indicative of the years of experience you have had in the funeral industry. I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of International Widows' Day, those celebrated on June 23rd, We are fortunate to have with us a representative of the Trinidad and Tobago arm of Widows Association, Ms. Sabrina Phillip, who will share with us now how we in Trinidad and Tobago assist in recognition of the widows amongst us.
Good afternoon. To the management and staff of Belgroves Funeral Home, our online viewers, invited guests, and distinguished guests today, our widows. It is my pleasure to join you as we recognize and commemorate International Widows Day 2022. On behalf of the management, staff, president, and founder of the Widows Association of Trinidad and Tobago, I bring greetings to you. The Widows Association of Trinidad and Tobago was formed because of a driven desire to bring genuine help and comfort to this often neglected sect of society. We at the Widows Association have been working diligently towards bringing awareness to the plight of widows and their families, those whose needs has been exacerbated within recent times due to the effects of COVID-19 on our national economy. The fallout of COVID, we have seen a rise in the number of widows, both young and old, who have been rendered helpless and feeling hopeless as they mourn the loss of their spouse. And as if to add insult to injury, many have found themselves out in the cold, so to speak, without monetary or emotional support, access to social grants, employment, etc. They join the ranks of millions of widows worldwide that have been forgotten. The United Nations recently reported that there are over 248 million widows worldwide. Now, this number can seem very daunting, and indeed it is. But support is not impossible. Through local partnerships and joining hands with government and civil society groups, the Widows Association have had the opportunity to host virtual educational programs which included group grief support, legal guidance seminars, financial advice sessions, as well as giving support and encouragement for spiritual well-being. Our aim is to empower widows and their families during this time of grief. In light of the restrictions because of COVID, we have found that using the web, using the platforms that is available to us, very beneficial in getting the message across. We have created WhatsApp groups, which was birthed from different groups, smaller groups that was formed within different communities within Trinidad and Tobago. We have used Facebook and Instagram as platforms through which we can spread the word that the widows needs our attention. We continue to move, as we continue to move in this direction, we will be hosting national events to promote and advocate the rights and benefits for their widows and their families. in a world reshaped by COVID, we would like to take this opportunity to invite our virtual audience to join with us. Be a part of this move. Be a part of what we are doing, because our widows deserve our attention. As we look through the glass of grief, it is indeed a tainted one. And please permit me, I would like to share with our widows a few tips from the Widows Association in-house psychologists, with the hopes that it will not only encourage but give the widows some sort of direction as they navigate this path. We want to let you know that you are not unheard. We want to let you know that you are not unseen. And we want you to know from all of us and all of our stakeholders, including Belgroves Funeral Home, that you are not forgotten. We are by your side, and we are committed to walking with you hand in hand. We would like to leave with you some tips that will help you as you navigate this grieving process. Be patient with yourself. Pray, meditate, do the things that you love to do, the things that brought you peace. Write a journal. Spend time with your loved ones. Do not be afraid to seek help or counseling. Do not be afraid to cry. Always remember that you are loved. You are strong, and it will get better. As we commemorate International Widows Day 2022, we ask the audience to remember the widows in their communities. Join in the efforts of Belgroves Funeral Home, the Widows Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and all the stakeholders that have come together, banded together, to ensure that the populace of Trinidad and Tobago knows that we need to heed the plight of our widows. We encourage each and every one of you to go to our Facebook page, Widows Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and feel free to join our community. In closing, I would like to encourage each and every one of us today. I would like to say to our widows that we love you, we are here for you, and we hope that coming out of this program, you would have experienced that love. You would have come to know of the support that is available to you, not only through the Widows Association, but through government agencies as well. And we hope that coming out of this program, you have now realized that you are part of a community that is standing by your side, a community that is ready, able, and willing to help you go through the process, to come through on the other side. The word of the Lord says that He will make the heart of the widows smile. And so this is an encouragement to each and every one of us today, that though the crying and the pain endures for a time and for a night, joy will come in the morning. Be encouraged. We bless each and every one of you under the sound of my voice. I pray that you all have a wonderful program, and happy International Widows Day. Take care, and God bless you richly. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ms. Phillip, for your insightful contribution and information shared. We commence this evening event by representing the country's national anthem being played. Allow us to continue to recognize our country with the use of the national instrument while I introduce to you Emmanuel Joseph. such a lovely rendition, Emmanuel. I thank you. Too often, we speak of widows and we envision a more mature person in our midst. One of the many reasons for hosting this event is to recognize young widows amongst us. Permit me to use this opportunity to introduce a young widow, Ms. Reshma Singh Manu. She would share with us a view through her window of grief. Welcome, Reshma.
Thank you, Karen.
Can you share with us, I know that you would have lost your husband a short time ago. Can you share with us what is your experience as you look through your window of grief?
Most certainly. When I lost my mother in 2018, March of 2019, sorry, I thought that nothing could have hurt more than that. She was my rock, and I loved her with every fiber of my being. But on November 1st, 2021, at about 6:30 a.m., my life changed forever. My perception of loss changed. I think it's a feeling that as much as you try to explain with words, you just can't. The way I see it is like it's an enigma wrapped in a riddle. Never in a million years, I thought that my 34-year-old husband of 11 years would have fallen asleep in death, and that at only 32, I would have been a widow. I remember every moment of that day very vividly. I close my eye and I think about it. I see him wiping his eyebrow that morning with a brown towel that was wrapped around his hands. And he was wiping his eyebrow, making sure that all the hairs were in one direction. He was swaying left to right and making sure that everything was in place. I remember him showing me a bruise to the right side of his head that he didn't notice before. And I remember touching it and then touching his right cheek. And he told me that, "It's all right, babe, I'm okay." I felt somewhat reassured, but not fully. But I decided to leave him there because he asked me to do something. So I stepped outside to do what he asked. And then as I walked back in, I called out to him, but I heard nothing. So I walked toward the bedroom to check in to see if he was okay, because earlier on that morning he passed out. When I walked into the bedroom and then into the bathroom, I remember seeing him on the floor. I remember screaming so loudly because I thought if I screamed louder that he would wake up. I remember calling the 999 operator. I remember her giving me instructions on the phone as to how to give CPR. Simultaneously, I was talking to one of my friends who, without even thinking anything, just left where she was to come home and make sure she was there with me. I remember 39 minutes I gave my husband CPR, but knowing that he was not alive. I dismissed that thought because I was like, no, there's no way that a 34-year-old could not be alive. When the ambulance came, I ran outside and I was crying, asking anybody to help us lift him onto the gurney. And there was no one except one person that came. And when we lifted him, I just knew in that moment that that was it. There was no doubt in my mind. When I was asked to present this afternoon, I had to seriously contemplate whether I had the strength to tell my story, or at least describe my journey and how I'm coping or trying to cope. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought about my husband, Vishan, and how he would have helped me reason out things. That's how we usually do things. We would have sat down and think about everything and then make a decision. I could picture it like in our living room. I would be sitting there. I would tell him, this is my fears. This is how I'm feeling. And then he would first ask me, babe, do you want to do it? Let us think about the pros and the cons, and if one outweighs the other, then you know what to do. Think about the people that you can help and possibly benefit from what you have to say. And then I would have retorted by saying, but what if I mess up? What if I don't remember what it is I have to say? Who really want to hear what? Me. To which he would have responded and said to me, babe, you'll be fine. Trust in Jehovah that he would help you, and even if nobody wants to hear you, I will listen. That's who he was. My biggest cheerleader, my confidant, my best friend. There wasn't anything that I couldn't talk to him about or tell him, and that's just who he was. But using that thought process and then talking to Miss Sampson, her wise words, got me thinking that everything that I do now is not autonomous of my husband, but rather it's because of him and the impact that he's left on me. Firstly, what has helped me tremendously is my strong spiritual grounding. As one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I am privileged to think of the hope of a future that is promised to us, and where I'm absolutely confident that I will see my husband again, and that those promises that Jehovah has set out in the Bible will come through. I'm fortunate to have the best in-laws that I can ask for. To me, they are more than that. They are mom and dad, and I have 3 sisters who have taken me in, supported me emotionally, spiritually, physically, in any way possible, and have given me the push to continue every day, even when I feel like giving up. The brotherhood, a family, I should say, of witnesses, whether it's through a message, a scripture, a card, a hug, a look, a touch, is just so encouraging. And my work friends, they have been such a pillar, as they don't mind that I randomly start crying sometimes in the middle of work. They try to keep the atmosphere very light and fun. So even when I feel like I'm alone, I am encouraged by all of these things, knowing that I really, truly never am. Jehovah has blessed me with family and true friends who I know will never leave my side. And like the scripture in Proverbs 17:17 that says that a true friend shows love at all times and is a brother in times of distress. Now, the theme of this event is through the window of a widow. Something changed. So what's changed? And my honest answer to that is me. We tend to often think about loss and grief very myopically and try to fit it into a specific mold of how we think we should feel and how someone should act. We place timelines on people getting back to normal, whatever that really means, based on our timetable, not theirs. But losing a husband is a totally different thing. It's a hodgepodge of feelings and emotions that unless you have had that relationship and can imagine it, you cannot understand. And that's okay. The fact is that loss changes you in so many ways. The more important thing, though, is how you navigate those changes. There's no exact formula or set pattern, and that's what I've learned through my journey. I've learned that you have to embrace the changes, and as cliche as this may sound, just take each day as it comes and try to make the very best of the situation. I cannot tell you that there's some magical solution or magical pill that you could take, or my way of coping should be your way of coping, but it's what works for me. But what I can say is that you can find joy and happiness. And as Ms. Sampson, our bereavement counselor here, helped me to really reason out, is to ask myself, how am I finding my way or joy, not in spite of, but because of my husband? Because of my husband, I am braver. I've learned so much from him, one of which is to be confident and brave, to be a go-getter. Otherwise, I would not have been here today. I always thought that I needed someone or people to do things. Not that people are not important, people are important, and it makes life even more enjoyable. But what I mean is that I always felt like I needed someone there when I do things, But I'm happy doing things on my own, taking drives to practically anywhere. Those are things we would have done together. Trying new foods, new experiences, even going to the gym by myself. That has been a huge help to me. It helps my mental and physical health, and I do it religiously without let up. And it gives me some semblance of routine and normalcy. Because of my husband, I have learned to appreciate every single moment. Life is not measured by the amount of money or the things that we have. It is measured by the experiences and the memories that we cherish. My stepdad once told me that the most expensive things in life are the things that money cannot buy. And he was right. Those moments that I shared with my husband, I will always treasure into eternity. And no, nothing can take that away from me. And for everything else, well, you have MasterCard. Because of my husband, I have learned that it's okay to be alone. I don't mean that, again, that I don't need people. We absolutely do need people to support us. I've seen that. But what I mean is that I'm okay with my own company. Learning about myself is almost like a path to self-discovery. I'm learning more about myself now than I did in years gone by. My strengths, the things that I can improve on. I'm learning a new skill and enhancing skills that I already have. I'm playing the guitar, which is something my husband and I did together. I'm improving my baking and cooking skills. I mean, he also enjoyed that. He was my guinea pig, but now I have new testers. So I'm having fun. Because of my husband, I feel like I can do anything. Vishan would have been responsible for everything, maintaining the cars, finances, budgeting, all those things. But he always taught me as he went along. Suffice it to say, I didn't always listen, but at least I wasn't completely lost. And where I am lost, I have really good friends and family who always give me nice tidbits that I can follow. So I can take care of our home, our bills. I can even go service the car, something that I couldn't do before, making sure I detail everything in a book so that when I go next time, I can do it on my own. Because of my husband, I learned to set boundaries and not be impulsive. I used to be afraid of saying no or speaking up for myself. Though I'm still learning to navigate that, his voice is always at the back of my mind reminding me that I need to set boundaries. Otherwise, people will take advantage of that. And nothing is wrong with standing up for yourself once you have thought it out properly, not reacting on high emotions, and ensuring that I think everything through before I make a decision, and weighing all the possibilities. Because of my husband, I learned that life is too short. Though we have a hope of something way better than what we experience now, we should treasure every single moment we have with those we love. Those moments we can never get back. We as people hold on to so much negativity, so much hate. To what end? I encourage people to be forgiven. Cherish your loved ones. Every second, minute, hour, day, year. We never know when someone is not going to be there again. I have learned many lessons that in this short moment I cannot encapsulate. But if I had the time, I could speak into eternity with everything I shared with my husband. But what I would love to encourage other widows, young and older, is that losing our husbands doesn't mean that we cannot find meaning in life and we can't find happiness. Neither of those things are predicated on having a companion, but it's about thinking about the positive ways that your husband has impacted you and how you can use those lessons to find it within yourself to push forward. Does this mean you wouldn't be a mess, miss him, or have dark days? No way. After my husband died, I was in a total mess. A dark abyss is how I describe it, that I still feel like I'm climbing out of. And though I smile sometimes on the outside, facades are very good, and masks also help. While they say time heals all wounds, this is one that no matter how much time passes, the wound seems as fresh as when it happened. but we will always have the memories that are indelibly etched into our hearts. One of his colleagues told me after he passed that he came to work on Friday, 29th October 2021, to sort out some paperwork, and he told her that he wanted to make sure that everything was in place. If anything were to ever happen to him, he wanted to make sure that I had nothing to worry about. It was almost as if it is he knew, but then that's just who he was. Vishan just wanted to make sure everything was okay. Even to the last, he thought of me. And it reminded me that he loved me with his entire being. Was our marriage perfect? No. Was he? Nope. Am I? No way. But the good far outweighed the not so good. If I were to take my husband's approach when I weigh the pros and cons, you know what? My decision 15 years down the line would be the same. I would marry him now, in this life, in the next life, in the next life to come, because I'm confident that I made the right choice. And because of my husband, not in spite of, because of, I am better.
Wow. And that's what we're celebrating today. Wow. Windows of a Widow. Reshma, I thank you for sharing that journey with me. Because of your husband, I have learned so much more about you. I have known you for the last more than 5 years, and there's so many things that you talk about that are first for me. So I am looking back, it's not just what your husband shared with you, but what you continue to share with others that would leave his memory on forever. I thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this afternoon, it is important for us to remember not just the young widows, but persons amongst us who have lost loved ones and continue to go through that period of grief without the assistance of others. We have used this opportunity to speak to the widows because of its International Widows Day. But for us, it's not just the older persons who have celebrated, 24, 25 years of marriage. There are young people amongst us who are going through that same pain. So I ask you in your conversations with them to remember when they speak too often about the same person and to be passionate about same. Allow me, I do apologize. Are we ready? Yes. Allow me to introduce to you another widow, another young widow. Face may be familiar to you, but I would introduce her nonetheless. At the Belgrove Group of Companies, we continue to celebrate the lives of several persons who have lost their spouses and are now widowed. One of those persons is no other than Giselle Chance, wife of Wayne Chance. Wayne, a former Vision on Mission member. We would have celebrated his death in 2019, yes, and we continue to remember with Giselle at this time. So Giselle, I thank you. Thank you so much for taking up the opportunity. And would you share with us what your window looks like? Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be here, and good afternoon to all of our guests, our distinguished guests, our online attendees. And I'm really honored to commemorate with you all International Women's Day and lending my voice to widows. And I hope my story and the experiences that I'm going to share with you all this afternoon will inspire widows out there to, persevere through the dark moments of loss and grief. My late husband, as you said, Wayne Brian Chance, was a very powerful, passionate, trailblazing advocate for restorative justice and for the provision of community corrections in Trinidad and Tobago. And we would have met 20 years ago, but still young. And we would have fell in love, and we'd have started our journey together, each helping each other to fulfill, each other's dreams. And one of his dreams was to start an NGO, and it is called Vision on Mission. And he labored for many years, and I say he lived a very full, rich life, and touched and inspired the lives of many, and inspired change and transformation within the lives of many men and women who would have been incarcerated. And, our journey together came to an end in November of 2019, when Wayne would have lost his battle to cancer. And he fought valiantly, he really did. But in spite of his best efforts, being, I would say, pretty young, in his 40s, he left behind myself, 3 children, and this precious vision, ironically called Vision on Mission. And he left these precious gems for me to now take care of. And that was a frightening, overwhelming experience for me. And going through that process of grief and loss in the latter part of 2020, I was also battling and grappling with taking on the new responsibility of leading Vision on Mission as a female CEO in a predominantly male environment, not having not having a prison experience myself. So it was quite challenging, to say the least, and the learning curve was a steep one for me. And while I was navigating all of those things, along came COVID. Just so, And I tell you, I said to Universe one day, I say, okay, like, is there anything else out there that you'd like to put on these little teeny shoulders? I find there's so much that I have to deal with already. And it really, all of these circumstances and COVID-19 itself brought out a whole new level of fear and anxiety as a single parent. And I started to think about my children. And COVID-19, at that time, we weren't sure what was happening. So I was really, really apprehensive. I remember wondering if my children may become orphans, because I didn't know how severe this COVID-19 issue was. And so many questions, so many issues swirling around my mind in the night times. And I'm sure there's some widow out there that may relate to what I'm explaining and what I'm saying. And, during that time, I learned some very important lessons. And those perspectives they have brought me to the place where I am now. And I would like to share with you just 3 of those lessons that I would have learned, and give you, open my window so you can see into my world a bit. And if you're into Netflix series or Korean dramas, there's a show called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And the title is what I'd like to use. Mandy Hale says you can truly heal from a loss. Well, you can't truly heal from a loss, I should say, until all of yourself really feels that loss. And I think this speaks about acceptance. It speaks about acknowledgement where you are. And that took me a little while to get to. Because I have a superwoman complex, right? I think our S is supposed to be permanently here. And I realized one day that I said to myself, Giselle, it's okay to not be okay. Up to now, you know, I say that to myself. I've learned to be gentle with myself. I've learned to accept myself in those moments when I think I'm weak. And I'm learning that grief is a very complex process. It is a lifelong process. It's a process, it's not an event. I'm learning that. And so I sit with myself oftentimes and I give myself the room and the space to just cry. It happened yesterday when I was ironing. And I was like, what is this? What am I crying about? And then, you know, there's that still small voice. And I don't know if it was because I was coming to talk about this experience today. And another part of me just unfolded and just released that grief that was inside of me. So, point number one, it's okay not to be okay. And the second perspective I've learned is, are you afraid? Afraid to move on, afraid to open up, afraid to learn anew, open yourself to new challenges as a widow? If you are afraid, do it anyway. Just do it anyway. Just go through it anyway. As I explained earlier, my transition into leading an organization such as Vision and Mission was at times intimidating for me. And there were persons who would say, how is this little quiet lady going to deal with these ex-inmates and deportees and these individuals? And I knew that birds of a feather flock together. So, and my late husband was a very strong man, and he would not have, and he saw strength in me. And while it may not have been, I may not have been boisterous and you know, very commanding as he was, I know within me lied that quiet strength that I had to call upon. And, you know, as Reshma would have shared, she could have, you know, looked at occasions when she would have heard the voice of her husband saying, you can do it. And that was the same for me. I would hear his voice, Jiz, you could do it. You could do it. And I answered that call, and I said yes. But I did it afraid. And at times, I'm dealing with a client and I'm afraid, but he wouldn't know. He wouldn't know. So, it's important that we take the time as women and as widows to truly look at ourselves. Search for ourselves. You know, widowhood presents us with a very, very divine opportunity. And it's an opportunity to spend time with ourselves, to get to learn ourselves, and to transform into our highest potential. And one of the things that can help you to overcome your fears, and before I move on, you know, fear has a way, I call it, it's like a vehicle you get in. And it carries you to the deepest and darkest dead-end road that you could ever find. And it has no intention of bringing you back. It leaves you right there. And at some point in time, you have to speak to yourself and make that decision to step out. In the darkness, there's no light around, but to step out and in the midst of that fear, push through and go towards that light. And for widows that may be out there who may be dealing with fear and anxiety pertaining to many different issues, you know, there's challenges about raising children on your own. There's financial issues. Becoming a widow leaves you very vulnerable as a woman. You no longer have that covering and that sense of safety that you once had. When you put down your head to sleep on the pillow, you know there's a male presence that's there, that loves you unconditionally, that is ready to protect. So these vulnerabilities can invoke severe feelings of fear. And this is where God speaks to us as women and says, fear not, because he has not given us that spirit of fear, but he has given us the power of love, sound mind. So there is the ability within you and I to be able to push through those fears. And one of the ways we can do that is to be open. And this is my last point, be open. I found that it's something that I sink into myself sometimes, where I tend to hold on to the past. And I'm a bit hesitant to be open to new experiences. You know, I recall Rishma talking about baking. And, you know, when I was married, my lifestyle was a very busy one. So I wasn't the kind of person to make bread and things. But in these times, I'm reconsidering that. And, you know, as I open and I have conversations sometimes with, you know, men who are interested, you know, and they ask me, they say, you bake? And I say, yes, macaroni pie and chicken. But you know, I was sitting one of these days and I said, you know, Giselle, you should really learn to make bread. And that's one of the things that I'm opening up myself to, among other things, you know. And be open to new platonic relationships. Be open to getting help. Be open to being supported, because you're not alone. There's so much support that God and the divine and universe, whatever you want to call it, has prepared for you. More so now that you are a widower. I don't think we understand how much God cares about the widow and the orphans. So he has already prepared so much for you in the spirit. So it's up to you to have that faith and, in a practical sense, reach out. Reach out. And be open to new perspectives about life. And what you'll find is that while you grieve, and for me, grieving is a balancing act. I'm holding on to what I know and what I've learned on one hand, and I'm constantly letting go. And I go between the two from time to time. But within these two spaces, I have to now find myself. And you have to find yourself as a widow. So it's okay to grieve. It's okay to hold on to the things that you know you should hold on to and treasure forever. And then there are things that you're going to have to let go of. And in the midst of doing that, as I close, I want to encourage you to truly find time to make time for you. Find time to learn about you, and find time to live well. So I thank you.
Giselle, I thank you. But before you leave me, you know, there's something that you touched on that I must make mention of. You spoke of the word fear and,
Yes.
you know, not being able to make that decision, to make that move. But as you ended, I want you to also remember growth only happens when you become uncomfortable.
Oh, yes.
All right?
Yes.
So I thank you for sharing. I know that it would have taken a lot out of you to reminisce, to walk that road again. But I thank you very much. And yeah, it has been an awesome opportunity.
Thank you. Auntie.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this afternoon, I would like to allow Michelle to serenade us once more so we get ourselves out of this momentum and into something a little bit more lively. So, Michelle, if you please.
I pray you'll be always and watch us where we go and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe. I pray we'll find your light and hold it in our hearts. When stars go out each night, remind us where you are. Let this be our prayer when shadows fill our day. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe. just like every child, need to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe. Ella Federica, Aya Chesogno. Sento che ci
Awesome. The song never fails. Michelle, thank you so much. I felt that in my bones. It would be remiss of us if at the Belgroves group of companies we only care for your loved ones and not for yourselves. So our next presenter will provide you with information as it relates to pre-planning and pre-financing for funerals. Allow me at this point in time to welcome Melissa Holder, our FLC Business Development Officer, who is versed in packages as it relates to pre-planning for your funerals. Melissa, welcome, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to have you here this afternoon.
Thank you. Good day all. Family Legacy Company, FLC as we refer to it, can assist you with pre-planning, how we go about this, and what is FLC. FLC is a member of Belgroves group of companies. FLC has over 30 years experience providing pre-planning funeral solutions that are designed to soften the impact of the financial and emotional stress on your family members. Solutions that enables the insurance that your goodbye is the way you envisioned it. The concept of pre-planning. Every life has a story, and the memorial is the time to tell it. Remember and celebrate love and life. This is the most important task for a family when a loved one dies. At FLC, we provide a holistic experience in remembering and celebrating the life of a loved one. We enable you and your family the opportunity to document your wishes to create a meaningful final tribute. Families can honor the memory of a loved one and start the healing process. FLC makes available everything from the type of memorial gathering, burial or cremation, even caskets, headstones and urns, personal touches and more, as we are supported by BFH, Belgrove Funeral Home, full array of quality products and concierge services. A level of pre-funding, pre-financing of the memorial is also available. Saying goodbye is important to those who love you and who you love. Pre-planning provides you the opportunity to create a meaningful tribute. By pre-planning, you protect your loved ones from having to make difficult decisions during one of the worst times of their lives. Pre-planning consists of the details of your funeral, thus eliminating the stress a family faces at a time of loss. And counseling services by none other than Ms. Sampson. And for families to give each other one of our greatest gifts of all, peace of mind. Pre-planning keeps costs reasonable and clear and under control, giving you the opportunity to pay for your funeral during working years. accumulates savings towards the funeral expense, and guarantees the price of the funeral against inflation. So why not pre-plan? Some will say, my children will handle this. Are they in a financially secure position to handle this? Do they know your wishes, what you wanted or would like? Some will say, I have insurance and NIS. Did you assign a beneficiary? Are your benefits up to date? And some will say, I want a simple, cheap memorial. Or as one of my family members said, just wrap me in a piece of cloth and cremate me. Someone has to take on the responsibility and the financing. Are they in a situation to do so? A death is an emotionally challenging time for families. It can bring them closer or create division. Family Legacy Company is here to provide that additional support to you and your family before, during, and after. So how do you pre-plan? You can start by contacting our office at 223-2178 or making a request via our Facebook page, and one of our business development officers will contact you to schedule an appointment and discuss your wishes and options.
Melissa, I thank you for that wealth of information. You know, so often we are given all that information and it becomes a mouthful. So can I use as a scenario? Should I pass tomorrow? Is it too late then for me to pre-plan, because you say pre-plan, or?
Well, we try to get you to do it in advance. You can document it. We can save that documentation for you, or you can have it with your family. What we advise is, even if you're not doing the pre-planning with us, have that discussion with your family. So they would know what you want and what you would have liked. A lot of times families can't locate simple things, ID card, birth paper. This is your opportunity to discuss what you want, where certain documents are. Because really and truly, a lot of families, their mind go blank at that time. It's a difficult time dealing with emotion, and then have to figure out what this one would have wanted, what would mommy, what daddy, what would my husband, what would my wife have wanted. So now is your opportunity to discuss it. In life, we plan for everything. We plan for marriage, we plan for a house, to buy a car, the perfect job. But there's one thing in life I always tell my clients, we cannot plan for that. We don't know when this will occur. So this is the opportunity now for us to put things in place.
Yeah, you know, when you speak about planning, what are some of those plans that we have in place, or Family Legacy Company has in place?
Well, what we usually do is sit with you and discuss what your options are. So we would discuss, do you have a preference for cremation? Do you have a preference for burial? We also discuss with you, do your family have a burial plot if you're looking at burial? We discuss with you the cost. Do you have an insurance? We advise you how that works as well. We advise you about the NIS. So we basically sit with you and discuss. You can choose down to your style of casket, the colors, your flowers, those things. You know, it's just a way to make it easier and make decisions easier for that family member that you're leaving to handle all of this.
So then, can I ask you, so we have this plan. How many years do you have to plan for? How long should the plan be then? Is there a stipulated amount of years?
No, there's not really a stipulated time for planning. You can update your plans. However, if you're looking at the pre-financing aspect of this, we give clients up to 7 to 10 years to start saving. And the faster you save, the faster you pay off for what we have discussed, because we give you a costing for it. And once you've paid in full, your price guaranteed. So you're locked in against inflation.
Okay, if I am to use myself as an example, at the age of 35, what would you have in place for me?
Well, you can
I am a single parent, one child. God forbid that, you know, I'm diagnosed with cancer within the next year. What would you all would be able to provide for me?
Well, what we would discuss, as I mentioned, we would look at your options. Do you prefer burial? Do you prefer cremation?
I would prefer cremation.
Cremation, great. So from there, we would start with what our basic packages are. Do you want live streaming? And we go straight into depth. What color flowers you would
So
like.
all that would be part of your
Yes,
package?
and we literally document this and you sign off on it. So your child will be aware, okay, this is what mommy would have wanted, what she would have liked. We also give you the opportunity to mention if there's any particular organization or if you want to make a donation to a particular organization. We document this, and so that way, when that time comes, your daughter can now look at this document and say, okay, this is what mommy wants. All right, and they can add. So they will say, okay, yes, mommy did like flowers. Let me add some more flowers. You know, it's really their opportunity to, you are helping them tell your story at this time.
You know, one of the many things I think about when you think of loss or someone passing and you have a family legacy plan, you would have chosen a package inclusive of a casket. I have chosen that casket today and I died 20 years down the road. How am I assured that that same make of casket is the one that I would be buried with, having chosen it 20 years prior?
Well, we do have a department within our company as well, CFS, where they manufacture caskets. So we would be able to replicate that option for you. And even if it is worst case scenario, your daughter may have something special she may want added to that, we can facilitate that as well. So everything is customized based upon your wishes and your family wishes.
So at this point in time, I don't have a family legacy plan. Is it something that you would recommend?
Definitely. I never thought about it myself. I always wanted to secure a home for my children. I always wanted to ensure, okay, they don't have to worry about a roof over their head, paying off my mortgage. But I never studied what would happen, God forbid, I close my eyes today or tomorrow. I wouldn't want to have to leave that financial burden on my parents. At least I'm putting something in place so that, and I did put it in place actually, so that they would know what I wanted and what I would have liked. And to make it easier financially on them. Because it's a huge finance. So not everybody have that finances put down. So if you don't have something, consider it, think about it, discuss it with your family. It is a wise investment and a very important decision to make.
Yeah, my final question to you, is family legacy just allowed for persons who are dealing with the Belgroves group, or would anyone else on the outside be able to, obtain this service?
Anyone can obtain the service, anyone. So you have the option to come in to us and do this. We offer from the memorial aspect as well. We assist in that in the sense of urns and keepsakes. We offer the burial plots. So there are a variety of stuff that we offer. I have clients up to today. They did their memorial elsewhere, but they use our services when it comes to the burial. So we do accommodate all persons.
Yeah. I thank you. I thank you for sharing that wealth of information with us. If there is any way of persons contacting you, do they contact you via the Belgroves number, or is there a special number for the family legacy?
They can contact us via the Belgroves number directly. The number, I will repeat, 223-2178, and the operator would put you on to us. And obviously our Facebook page, you can make inquiries, and one of our business development officers, it might be me, myself, contacting you, or another person to make an appointment, and you can come sit down with us and we make our decisions from there.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
You're welcome.
As we continue today, the Belgrove Group of Companies has always been recognized for being the first in so many different avenues that we tread upon. We have provided you with information as it relates to family legacy and pre-planning of your funeral. But so often we only use that as an option, you know, in terms of when someone passes. What I would like to do is to introduce to you now another young lady, very bright young lady, Carissa Pigas, attorney at law, who is going to give you some guidance as it relates to estate planning and estate administration. Carissa, I thank you. Thank you for allowing us to meet with you. And if you are to guide our viewing audience, listening audience, as to why is it necessary to even have estate planning? What good is it for us?
Certainly. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this afternoon, and good afternoon to your listening and viewing audience. This has been a very informative session thus far. I would like to start by saying that estate planning has been viewed in Trinidad and Tobago and in the region at large as somewhat of a taboo subject. And I'm here to tell you that it should not be a taboo subject at all. In fact, estate planning is very important. Why is it important? So let me tell you. Estate planning is something that all of us should consider, because we all have estate. We all have assets. And without it, I'm here to tell you that what's going to happen to your assets is that your assets will be distributed in accordance with the Wills and Probates Act and the Distribution of Estates Act, which may not quite be in accordance with your intentions at the end of the day. So some of you may be thinking, well, I don't have any estate. In fact, I've heard it all too many times. Many people say, well, I don't have anything. Most of us have estate. If you have a car, you have estate. If you have a motor vehicle, if you have a motorcycle, if you have furniture, if you have a house, if you have land, all those things form part of your estate. Cash in the bank, that's estate. So how do we treat with our estate? How do we plan ahead for that eventuality that is death, that we all must face at some point? Well, there are a couple methods that we may look at. The first I would like to touch on is a trust. A trust is a legally binding instrument or arrangement whereby the trust deed is something that you would establish, and that document would basically guide the management of whatever it is you put in your trust. You could put property in a trust or anything else. So whatever you put in that trust, basically you have a trustee who's appointed and who's going to manage your estate, whatever it is in the trust, and that is going to be managed in accordance with the intent and the intentions of the trust, as well as the best interests of the beneficiaries of the trust. The second thing I would like to talk to you about is non-probate methods of treating with your assets. Now, when I say a non-probate method, what I mean is that there are ways of dealing with your assets in such a manner that it does not have to go to the courts. A lot of people fear that when they pass, their relatives have to face that court system. They have to pay hefty legal fees. So sometimes, if you have insurance policies, for example, you may wish to name a beneficiary or some beneficiaries. That's certainly possible. And when you do that, basically, you provide for those persons. When you die, that does not form a part of your estate. Instead, what happens is that the benefit of those policies go to the beneficiaries. It does not form a part of your estate. Secondly, a similar process applies to cash in the bank. You may put a beneficiary on your accounts, for example, or beneficiaries, and the same principle applies there. Similarly, whereas real estate is concerned, which is like property, land, house, basically what you can do in a non-probate form or fashion is that you may wish to name joint tenants. You could name one joint tenant, you could name several joint tenants. What happens then is that when you pass on, the right to survivorship applies. What that means is that instantly upon death, whichever joint tenant, let's say there's one joint tenant, that one joint tenant takes your property, absolutely. If there are multiple joint tenants, the multiple joint tenants will share the property. It goes to them absolutely as a whole. Secondly, you may wish to create a life tenancy. Some people do that. A life tenancy simply means that you may wish to retain an interest in your property for life. And what that does is that when you pass on, your interest ends and the interest passes on to the remainder man, whoever you choose to name in that deed. So those are just some non-probate ways that you could treat with your assets so that it doesn't really get tied up in the court system. But the most common method of estate planning, I'm here to tell you, is wills. And why is it so common? Because it's simple and it's effective. A will is a testamentary document. What that means is that it takes effect upon death, right? So what is a will? A will is it's a simple thing. It's a legal document, and it basically lists out your assets and your intentions with respect to the distribution of those assets. So I would always advise that, don't create a will on your own. Don't try to draft your own will. Why? Because there are formalities involved. And if those formalities are not met, what happens is you may invalidate your will. So what are some of these formalities that, we need to touch on? Okay, so let's say you want to create a will. How do you go about creating a will? You may visit your attorney's office, and one of the first things they will tell you is that you have to compile, you have to think about your assets. What it is that you would like to include in your will. What are these assets? So it's important to give some critical thinking there and to detail as much as possible what assets you'd like to include in your will and to whom you would like those assets to go to. So those persons will be called your beneficiaries. You could name anyone as a beneficiary, really. So once you have your assets, you know who your beneficiaries are, you have to ensure that you have an executor or executrix, basically the male or female equivalent, it's the same. So that person must be a trustworthy person, and that person is responsible for the execution of your will. So that person will, in essence, have to make an application to the courts for a grant of probate. And once that person gets the grant of probate, that person will be responsible for the distribution of your estate in accordance with your intentions, which would have been listed in the will. Mm-hmm. Another formality is that in terms of the execution of your will, when you make a will, you must sign at the foot of the will. It's very important, and there must be two witnesses who are independent of the will. What does that mean? Simply means that those two persons cannot be beneficiaries. They cannot benefit at all under the will. The executor can benefit, but the beneficiaries must be independent of the will. They must witness the will at the same time, that's very important, and in the presence of each other. So this is just the most common method, I would say, that a lot of people utilize in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of estate planning. We would have heard about making funeral arrangements and that sort of thing in advance. That's certainly something that I would encourage anyone to do. It's important because you want to save your family that headache, that heartache, and that sort of thing. Because when you lose someone, it's very difficult to focus in on the legalities involved. Now, there's a second part of this thing. So that the first part is estate planning. The second part, which a lot of people, this is where the problems tend to come in. The second part is estate administration. Now, what does that mean? I'm just going to break it down quite simply. Some of you may have lost loved ones and may have said, okay, I have this house. How do I get this house in my name? How do I get access to money in the bank if I'm not a beneficiary, for example? You may have gone in with a death certificate to the bank, for example, and you would have been hit with this information that you need to go through the courts. It's not something to be feared, but I'm here to tell you what the process is. So it's a twofold process. Basically, there's the process whereby someone dies testate, that is with a will, and there's the process whereby someone dies intestate, that is without a will. So what happens is that when someone dies, you determine if the person has a will or not. Let's say, I'll start with the will, the whole testate aspect of it. If the person has a will, what happens is that you have to go through the probate registry. So all of this is done through an attorney. Let me just preface. The attorney will make an application, a search basically in the probate registry to determine whether or not there are any other wills lodged in the probate registry. Why? Because the last living testament, the last will that that person made, so long as it is valid, is the will that will take effect upon death. So it's important that you search the registry to determine whether there are any other living wills or whether any applications were made in the estate. Once the search is cleared, it comes back, the attorney will prepare the application, and an affidavit of due execution must be done, and that is done by one of the attesting witnesses. Basically, that affidavit would speak to the testamentary capacity that the testator would have had when they would have made the will in the first instance. It would have spoke to, the two witnesses being present at the same time, and these were the person's intentions and that sort of thing. The will would be annexed to that affidavit, a certified copy of the will, of course, and of course the inventory of assets and liabilities has to be included. What is that? That is a list basically of all the assets of the deceased. Sometimes you go to an attorney, the attorney tells you, well, I need to find out all the assets. You have to list all the assets in the inventory. That has to be filed in court. So once everything is done, everything is filed, then you give way to receiving a grant of probate from the court, which is basically a grant that will give you the right to access the assets of the deceased and distribute those assets according to the intentions and wishes of the person. So the second aspect of that is intestacy. Now with intestacy, there are similarities in that it's initiated in a similar sort of fashion where you still have to do that search in the probate registry. That's the first step. You do it through an attorney. And you go through the process. It's the application that must be filed, an application for letters of administration or letters of administration with will annexed, because sometimes a will may name an executor and the executor may pass on or something of the sort. So sometimes you have letters of administration with will annexed. I would say the main difference is that the documents in the application that must be filed are quite more, it's more substantial. So you have to file the death certificate of the deceased, very important, a certified copy. You have to file so if let's say it's a spouse who's making the application, marriage certificate must be included. Let's say it's a child of the deceased, birth papers must be included, and these are original copies. If one child is making the application on behalf of the others, consents from those other children must also be included. An administration bond must be included. Basically, that is a document that ensures that, I'm going to bind myself to the court and I'm going to make sure that the legal personal representative is going to do what they promised to do according to the law. Now, what is that promise? Under the Wills and Probate Act and the Distribution of Estates Act, there is an order of distribution that is included there if you don't have a will. So remember, I would have mentioned earlier that that order may not be what you would have intended, which is why it's important to do the estate planning. Without it, with the intestacy, there's an order of administration, there's an order of distribution, right? So you go along that, and those are the persons who will be entitled. The legal personal representative, once they receive the grant of administration, they have a duty to distribute the estate to those persons in accordance with that order of distribution. The inventory of assets and liabilities must also be filed. That is customary in all applications. So that is just a gist of a very small gist. There are certainly more things that I can go into, but I think that should give you all some type of insight into the entire process in a nutshell. And I hope that what I have said this evening is informative and is able to assist in some manner or fashion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carissa. before we even started this afternoon, you spoke of the word estate, and foolish if I am, I thought estate only spoke to children. I never realized estate spoke to any asset that you have when you pass.
Certainly.
So therefore the estate would be, that would have to be to distribute all those assets, regardless as to what they are,
Yeah.
to whoever is surviving you.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, I have gotten a will. I have one child. Nobody else to give it to. Single parent. Do I really need a will?
So I would say if you have, let's say, an only child, I myself am an only child, you can try the non-probate, right? The non-probate methods. Now, you can certainly, for example, you have cash in bank, you can name that your child as a beneficiary on your accounts. If you have insurance policies, you name that one child as a beneficiary. If you have property, you may wish to hold the property jointly with that child, so that when you pass, the right to survivorship applies. So it in essence assists the child in the event that, in facing that eventuality that maybe you're passing before him or her. So what that would do is that it may save the child the hassle of going through court, as well as the legal expense attached to it. Sometimes, it's not possible to evade court, sometimes, because maybe you might have residuary estate that you may not have thought about, or you may have passed on without dealing with it in a non-probate fashion. So certainly in that instance, the child would have to still go through the court system. But the estate duties may be quite small, because you may have dealt with a substantial amount of your assets and your estate during your life.
Yeah, and like you say, you've shared with us a wealth of information, and I can find so many other questions to ask you. But if I am the beneficiary of a will, what do, as the executrix, is that the right term?
Female, that's a female term.
Okay, as the executrix, what does it cost me if I have to, what is it, probate a will?
Probate.
Yeah, what is the cost?
It really depends on the value of the estate. So attorneys calculate those fees based on a formula that's set out in the Legal Professions Act.
And what if I just write a piece of paper that this is for you?
Nope.
It doesn't stand up in court?
No, because there's so many formalities, like I said. And without all those formalities, courts won't recognize it.
Yeah. What about in a common law relationship? What difference does it make? Who is the estate, or what belongs to whom?
Right. So you touched on a very important topic there. A lot of people ask that question. They may die without a will, and there may be a cohabitational spouse. So what happens there? In the Distribution of Estates Act, basically, the order is such that the spouse comes first, and in the event that there is no spouse, the cohabitational spouse takes the place of the spouse. Then secondly, you have issue. That word issue is children of the deceased. If you have a spouse and issue, the spouse takes half, the children share the other half. If you have, let's say, a cohabitational spouse, no legal spouse, but you have a cohabitational spouse and the children, the same principle applies, that the cohabitational spouse takes the place of the spouse, and so that person would have one half, the kids will have the other half. But of course, it doesn't just happen just like that. The cohabitant has a duty under the Act. Within 28 days of death, they must make an application before the courts for the recognition, a notice basically, of intention to make that application for recognition of their status as a cohabitational spouse. So they need to seek an order out from the court.
Yeah. You know, this is Trinidad, right?
Yes.
And so often we engage in other relationships without relinquishing the first one. So I'm married, but I'm also living with someone, and I pass. Who gets all that I have?
Right. So let's say I'm married.
And you know, they talk about this you're living with this person for 5 years, so they're entitled.
Right. No, it's not just that. So there's so much to talk about on this topic, but you're right. Sometimes there's a situation where there's a spouse and a cohabitant. What happens then? what happens is that under the actual act, if you have a spouse and you have a cohabitational spouse as well, the cohabitational spouse may apply for whatever he or she has acquired during the tenure of their relationship with the deceased, right? But that's, of course, subject to the rights of the spouse and the children as well. Now, the courts will have to decide. It has to go through the courts. It's not something that's hard and fast. And this notion that the only thing that matters is dwelling with the deceased for 5 years immediately preceding the death. It's not simply that. You have to prove the actual cohabitational relationship. So you have to prove that you've had that relationship with the deceased that's akin to a spousal relationship. You shared the same bed, that type of thing. So affidavits will have to come in from supporting witnesses. And so it's not as simple as people think it to be. It has to be proved before the courts.
We're getting a lot of questions from the viewing public, and my teleprompter is not very legible, but I would try to see what is being said here. If there is an executrix of the will, usually the eldest child gets permission from the other siblings that they, while the others are reluctant. So who do we give permission to then if we have to distribute this estate? So nobody else wants it, but all of us exist.
I'm trying to understand the question. So if there's no executors...
Yeah, there's something wrong with the teleprompter.
Yes.
Clearly. Yeah.
If there's no executor of the will, usually the eldest child gets permission from the siblings. What if those siblings are reluctant or refuse to give permission?
Okay. So, if there's no executors of the will that can actually prove the will, remember I would have touched on that. You may go, so what the process is letters of administration with will annex. So you go through the letters of administration processes as if you don't have a will. But you annex the will. You're telling the court, hey, I have a will, but this is the issue here. If the others refuse to give permission, so you have to, it's a whole thing. You'd have to make an application to the court. Right?
It's a lengthy process.
It's a lengthy, well, not lengthy, but it would be lengthier than, let's say, you know, you have consents. If you don't have the consents, you have to make that application to the court, let the court know what the issue is, the challenges that you're facing, and you have to make an application to bypass them. That's what it is. And you have to get that permission from the court to proceed.
Yeah, I think you have touched and you've educated us on a topic that is very close to so many. Us not having the knowledge and the information that you have to impart. So I thank you. I know we can sit all day and talk about wills and estates. However, we can't take up too much more of your time. So I thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And you would certainly be hearing from a lot of people as it relates to preparation of wills and estates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. To our listening public, I am certain that you would have gained a lot of information that you did not have before. So, Carissa, again, I thank you.
Our next speaker is an associate of the Institute of Canadian Bankers and holds an associate's and bachelor's degree in psychology. She's a motivational speaker, mentor, and life coach with over 30 years of experience as a business professional. She's also the in-house bereavement counselor here at the Belgroves Group of Companies, a position she has held for over 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ms. Kerrit Sampson.
Good afternoon again, and thank you for such a warm welcome. I had no idea I was all of that, but I thank you. As we continue with this afternoon, I beg to ask the question, how many of you considered widows to be elderly persons? And I throw that out to you, the audience. And I'm speaking of persons over the age of 55. So for the younger widows amongst us, I'm speaking to you. As we decided to host this event, recognizing widows, I reflected on the theme, window of a widow. And I'm certain as widows look through their own windows from inside outward, that the view changes frequently. For some of us, that view takes the appearance of fear, despair, anger, anxiety, and loneliness. And for others, growth. Today, I want to focus on a part of our team when we spoke of something changed. And two of our other speakers would have also shared their views as it related to same. Change is brought about by some form of impact. You'd agree with me. In this case, I want to reference the impact of you having experienced that loss, the loss of a spouse. One of the interesting elements of change, however, is its relationship from what was to what is to what will be. It embodies a range of emotions from fear to faith. As a widow, you would experience changes in financial stability, security, and livelihood. And that's just to name a few. Because as the other person shared, you would have realized their journey, their experience was even different. You will agree with me that change elicits fear in some and excitement in others. Now, I'm choosing my words correctly or carefully, as someone asked me recently, can you be happy while you're grieving? Well, I'm saying, well, you can. I think you can. Aren't there moments of joy and laughter during the saddest funerals? And I'm sure we can all relate to that. Therefore, varied emotions are associated with grief. And a combination of them spread from pain to pleasure. Part of the transition into life, however, having experienced a loss, and for you widows and for anyone else who has experienced a loss, one of the many things that I've learned is that there should not be a fear of the future. And I know earlier speaker, Mrs. Chance, spoke to that. So often we are afraid of the unknown. And the only way we can conquer the unknown is by going at it head first. So yes, you would have been put in a position where you are left without the knowledge of certain things as relates to how do you go forward. But your only message, your only way of gathering that information is by taking that plunge and trying to figure out what I did not know. Again, part of that post-loss says that it allows you to make, don't be afraid either to make decisions. So often people come to us and they say, but you haven't done this yet and you haven't done that yet. So when are you going to do so and so? Everything in its own time. As we continue to make those decisions that would speak to now who you are, I ask you to take your time and do it. Not because someone has said, yes, put the house in the market. Yes, do this investment. Girl, you have so much money. No, in your own time. Again, and our audience, one of the persons before spoke to the fact that dating too soon. And our culture speaks to how do we do this? Our culture puts us in a place where we are forced to wear black, where we are forced to not be happy when someone passes, where we are forced to be, in that sad state for a 40-day period. Why? So why can't we express some element of joy as we grieve? As a bereavement counselor, a lot of my friends reach out to me, and it's interesting that what is shared comes from the heart. You find people most vulnerable when they grieve, when they are going through that grieving process. so that we don't take advantage of them at that point in time. So I'm asking you, as you widows go through your period of loss, as you experience this journey through grief, I'm asking you to think of the changes that you go through and know that the changes that you go through become history the moment that you learn to appreciate what it means and how it relates to what is. Allow me to leave with you some thoughts as I close, and I know you have heard a lot of me today, so allow me to leave with you some thoughts. Becoming a widow at any age is difficult. Loss of a spouse would linger for the rest of your life. Trust me. For those who have experienced a loss within the last 5 years, 10 years, the pain just becomes easier, but it does not go away. Know that the grief that you feel is not something that you get over, but something that you go through. The word widow does not define who you are. So on the next occasion when someone asks, "Who are you?" you answer, "I am not just a widow. I am Karen." Thank you.
So we have a question from Meryl Latouche Mohammed Karen.
Certainly.
She asks, what specific advice would you give to the family members of the widow to best support her?
I would tell them at all times to keep close. Keep close, allow them to tell their story. So often we tend to think that, taking persons out of the environment helps them with their grief. Believe you me, if you take me from here to Timbuktu, I take my grief with me. So allow them the opportunity to grieve, be there for them, be their support, and be a good listener. Yeah?
Listeners, they're asking, sometimes persons tend to try to speed up the grief process for others, as would have been mentioned, sort of put a timeline on how long they think somebody should grieve for.
Yeah.
But what can you say to those people when they are helping widows, or even others as well, when they are dealing with grief, how they should approach a situation like that? Because of course they would want people to get back to normal, but nothing about loss is normal. So what would you say to those persons?
Certainly. And I thank you for that question. Grief doesn't have a time span. I remember so clearly a client coming to me and indicating that she had lost her husband, and she was told by her mother-in-law, "Well, he's dead, you need to get rid of his stuff and you need to move on." So, within a couple of weeks, all of what he had that she could have related to was out of her midst. And she sought counseling, but why? Because all of a sudden she no longer had anything to refer to. I don't have my husband. I don't remember who he is, because everything was taken away from me with such haste, because somebody thought that that was the best way to grieve. Take your time. But as you take your time, remember that the grieving process is a journey. It is not a place to stay. Why I say that? Because so often we feel that if we continue to remain in that place of grief, that we continue to get the attention that we seek. So we remain there and people continue asking, "How are you? And how are you? And how are you?" And if we let go of that, it means we feel that no one cares. But that's your period to heal. Yes?
We have one other question, Karen, for widows and maybe widowers or others online now that are looking at this our Voices of Widows session, if they need to reach out to someone to speak to, let's just say they're having a hard time, we know you as the bereavement counselor here at Belgroves are open to that. Can you give them some more information as to how you can be reached, what the process is, so that we too can ensure that those persons are helped?
Certainly. You know, at the Belgroves Group, we pride ourselves on the fact that we are the only funeral home that has an in-house bereavement counselor, that being myself, Carrot Sampson. What we also pride ourselves on is that we do not just provide bereavement counseling for persons who have utilized our services. Free bereavement counseling is affordable for everyone who has experienced a loss. And I am available. You can reach me. My cell phone contact is on the website, 364-9126, or through the Belgroves Group. I would only be too willing to assist. Thank you. Allow me at this time to introduce, to have another steel pan movement as we introduce Mr. Joseph. Thank you. such a lovely rendition. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me the opportunity to introduce to you our marketing manager who would do a vote of thanks, Miss Camille Diabro. And if I pronounce that incorrectly, Camille, can you tell the audience the right pronunciation of your name, please?
Sure, Carrot. It is Camille Dabro.
I do apologize.
So it's okay. Today, as we end this session, we must say that it has been a truly emotional yet eye-opening one for many of us. When a wife loses her husband, she loses her best friend, her life partner, her protector, and the father of her children. As we may have heard from young and old widows today, it can feel as if you have lost your center of gravity and your life has been turned upside down, and recentering life can often be a daunting challenge. But you can be certain that you are not alone and that you can find a way to navigate this journey successfully and still find joy in everyday life, holding close to the memories of your dear husband. We at the Belgroves Group of Companies would like to take this opportunity to remind all widows that you are not alone in this journey. We are here to support you through this time in any way we can. To you, we tip our hats and salute the good work you are doing. This event would not have been possible without the support of so many people, and we would like to take this time to thank them. Firstly, Mr. Belgrove and the team, thank you for putting together this event, and we hope that we can do more like this and even support our widowers in the future. Minister Sanya Bihari, thank you for the opening prayer and setting the tone for the event. Mrs. Sabrina Phillips, Senior Administrator of the Widows Association of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you for representing the widows, the association today, and sharing more about how your association can and will support widows in Trinidad and Tobago. To Mrs. Singh Manu and Mrs. Chance, we are so grateful that you found the strength to not just share your story, but to encourage others who are going through the same situation. Our very own Melissa Holder, thank you for explaining the benefits of pre-planning and how to go about doing this. Ms. Pegas, thank you for taking this time to address the legal aspects that are usually a challenge for widows. Mrs. Carrot Sampson, thank you for sharing practical ways that widows and others can cope with grief and for being open to helping others as they navigate their emotions after the loss of a loved one. Mrs. Dorridge, thank you for your beautiful renditions. Your melodious and soulful singing added so much more to this evening's sessions. And to Mr. Emmanuel, thank you for your exquisite performance of those songs. We would also like to say a special thank you to some of our sponsors. Flourish Boutique 868, thank you for the lovely bouquet. Barb Plus Services, Ms. Jamelia Antoine, for sponsoring mocktails for our speakers with her handcrafted blends. Blissful Baskets, Ms. Crystal Leotard, for the beautiful baskets. Fancy Fudge Treats, all the way in Tobago, Ms. Crystal George, for those handmade tokens. Pompeii by Jaya, Ms. Jaya Prasad, who worked feverishly to produce these beautiful branded masks for us. Morvino for their sponsor of 2 coupons for lunch bowls at their establishment. And I should say that the winner of this voucher is Ms. Marilyn Latouche Mohammed. Thank you for your question, and you have won 2 coupons for lunch bowls for the establishment. Please contact the office for your vouchers. All these persons can be found on IG and Facebook to find more information on their products and services. Finally, we would like to thank you, the viewers and contributors who took the time to tune in and support us and each other. At Belgroves, we celebrate life's precious memories, not just when someone passes, but in life. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the listening and viewing audience. I know that we will have spent the last 2 hours together. I know that I've also shared with you a wealth of information. We at the Belgroves Group remain available for persons who have experienced a loss, who are seeking comfort in terms of a grief story, in terms of assistance with their journey as they celebrate their loss. I remain available to you all. I would like you at this time to give yourselves a round of applause as we end this evening's event. Thank you.